Hello and welcome to Tax Matters. I am Pearl Naimaka.
And I am Chiamaka Ohaochi.
Under the company's income tax regime, Nigeria operates what is known as self-assessment, whereby a tax-paying company, after due preparation of its accounts and audits by qualified accountants, assesses itself to tax.
That is to say, after due adherence to relevant accounting and tax provisions, the company by itself computes its tax liability and proceeds to make appropriate payment in that regard.
Like tax officials like to say, they trust tax-paying companies. They believe in their good-naturedness. They believe that they are good corporate citizens of Nigeria. But then, in few instances, there are questions as to the adequacy of the taxes computed and paid by these companies. That is when you begin to hear about tax audits, tax investigation.
The Federal Inland Revenue Service continually engages in training and retraining of its personnel. On Monday, the 17th of June 2019, the FRS began hosting the Intermediate Tax Audit Course 2019, anchored by the African Tax Administration Forum, ATAF. The story of that training course will be told on this episode. But before then, what, you may ask, is tax audit? And what is tax investigation?
Tax audit is an in-depth examination which involves the tax auditors going to the taxpayer's premises and then looking at the underlying records just to confirm that he has complied with the tax laws and he has also paid the proper taxes. Usually it takes about a week or so to do that in the premises of the taxpayer. And for investigation, it's a little deeper and is usually coming up through a trigger. Most investigation cases end in litigation, and it involves sometimes search and seizure in the premises of the taxpayer.
Is there any reason for the taxpayer to fear the tax audit process?
There is no reason at all. If you have complied with the law, and if you need also some clarification, there is no reason to fear. Tax audit in itself is just to reinforce compliance with the tax law. And that way, we'll be able to minimize cases of evasion, cases of avoidance. There is no reason to fear at all.
Okay.
Yep.
Okay. Now, you have defined tax audit. What do you do? What are the steps you take in conducting tax audit?
To conduct a tax audit, there will be a trigger. You would have done some risk analysis about the returns of the company, whether the company files return or not. You normally get information. Information is all over the place. If there are information that posts a company as a risk factor in the industry it operates, we will mark such a case for tax audit. And normally we notify the taxpayer on the day we'll be coming.
Okay.
When we notify him, we also give him the list of the things that we require for that audit to hold. We go to the premises. It takes about 5 days depending on the volume of activities. Then after that, we do some reconciliation meetings with the taxpayers. From the reconciliation, we'll be able to agree on issues that border on the law and border on compliance. Thereafter, it might end up, we assess him. It may not end up in assessment. It may just be that we have also engaged the taxpayer in a way that his compliance level is reinforced.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. What are the common documents, the kind of documents that a taxpayer that is going to undergo audit, what are the documents that he has to get ready?
First of all, he has to make his returns, the normal returns that he should file with the tax office, his financial statements, his capital allowance, his computations, and all the underlying records that we need to do the audit, his general ledger, his final records, and also the transaction records in terms of what makes up those things that he records in his final account. And apart from that, his bank transactions, we also sometimes want to know people behind the company and his customers, his suppliers, his relationship with some stakeholders to the companies, the shareholders, the contributors to the companies. Those are the things normally that but usually we don't have an exhausted list of the things that we require. As we go on the exercise, if we require some other information, we ask the company. But usually we implore companies to always keep their records so that when we get to the field, we have a hitch-free audit process.
That's from our archives, only on Tax Matters.
Back to our story on the intermediate tax audit course. The executive chairman, Federal Inland Revenue Service, who is also the chairman ATAF, was in attendance at the opening ceremony and placed the training course in perspective in his opening address.
If we trace the history of Nigeria from independence, from 1960 to the mid-70s, when we found oil in commercial quantities and ranked among the top 6 oil exporters, and until 1999, Nigeria and Nigerians continued to rely on oil revenue. The issue of taxation was hardly discussed. The level of compliance was at an all-time low, both at the federal and the state levels. Now, this government has decided a process of diversification, ensuring that we increase the productive capacity of all Nigerians, especially in the area of agriculture and, of course, infrastructural development. And where does this all lead to? It leads to FIRS. Our responsibility is to fund all tiers of government, federal, states, and local government through taxation. And this is the same process or same expectations or objectives of all African countries. And that is where ATAF comes in. We believe that if we develop our own human capacity and with the right vision, Africa should be able to fund its own projects, its own programs. And like the Ghanaian president talks about, anytime he has the opportunity, he talks about Ghana beyond aid. It's now time for Nigeria to say the same. And that's why we have decided to run this course.
To the participants,
I ask and request that you pay close attention to all the principles and case studies contained in the training module. Some of you might say that, well, the Nigerian economy is different, but at the end of the day, you'll be surprised to find out that some measures or some principles applied in other African countries can also apply in Nigeria. Our expectation after this course is that all of you will not only acquire relevant knowledge and skills, but of course demonstrate proficiency in the application of standards for effective and efficient tax-paying audits. We should remember and remind ourselves always that we're a service organization. And although nobody wants to pay taxes, nobody likes to be audited, but in carrying out that function, we have to carry out that function in a manner that even the taxpayer will appreciate what we're doing.
to other stakeholders.
I also speak to the big four in Nigeria. Those are the KPMGs, the PwCs, etc., for them to join us together, because if they sign off on these accounts and we do an audit and we find out that they have hidden a lot of information, it's not good for them and it's not good for us. So this is a collective exercise that we have to do. And what we're trying to do here is to make sure that you're not at a disadvantage when you meet on the field people from the big four. Right now, there are a few other independent audit companies coming into the Nigerian market, because as we continue to raise the level of compliance, they continue to engage more consultants also to try and defend their positions. But I tell people, taxation is very simple. It's a matter of law and mathematics. And of course, when you combine knowledge, that's the end game. And so we're providing you with knowledge.
The training lasted for 5 days, covering the whole gamut of tax audit, including audit process and documentation, case studies, transfer pricing, and many more. Course facilitators were drawn from the ranks of tax experts from Swaziland, Tanzania, Rwanda, Burkina Faso, and Uganda. The Tax Appeal Tribunal came up strongly for mention during the course, further underlining the important place of the tribunal in the scheme of things. Dr. Ahmed Omar Idris is the Director Training at the FIRS.
Who is this training for?
The training is for tax audit staff that have come from the various tax audit functions in the service.
So with this exercise, what does ATAF in collaboration with the FIRS hope to achieve?
Well, the main objective of this training program is to strengthen the taxpayer audit capacity of our staff, whose only responsibility will be to help increase compliance. The whole idea is to help increase compliance. And the only way we can do that is to strengthen the capacity, to build capacity in taxpayer audit. It will be the first in a series of programs that ATAF, in conjunction with FIRS, will be organizing.
This is a training activity. It intends to build the capacity of officers that works in the tax administration. We provide trainings to all tax administration in Africa, but for this one specifically, it is the FIRS special training program in tax audit. What we are looking at is to empower tax officers in as far as the audit function is concerned, given its importance and significance, in order for the continent, or Nigeria for that matter, to be able to collect revenue and able to raise the revenue that is enough to run the government and to provide all the services. There has to be proper audit that are being conducted to individuals, to multinationals, to companies that are running from inside, even from outside. So for the revenue administration to be able to raise the needed targets or revenues, officers must know how to audit thoroughly. Yes, we encourage taxpayers to comply voluntarily, to do self-assessment, but still on sampling basis, we go back and ask companies or individuals to provide us with their books so that we check the accounts and we are able to, to see whether they filed properly or there was somewhere, somehow, where the law was not, followed. So basically it's to assist, empower tax auditors with skills that will guide them and lead them to run appropriate audits, but in the end is to collect and raise the revenue that countries require for development.
Mr. Femi Edgar is Nigeria's representative at ATAF Secretariat. He also spoke about the ultimate objectives of the FIRS in organizing the course.
I'm sure you're aware that ATAF is the body where you have all the tax agencies in Africa, which is chaired by our own Mr. Tunde Fowler, Executive Chairman of FIRS. One of their major mandate area is to develop capacity. Why develop capacity? Especially personnel capacity. Because you need tax money to develop every country in Africa. The more you have highly skilled and well-trained tax officials, the more revenue they can bring into government coffers. So this tax audit course is designed with that primary aim, that it comes into Nigeria, and we've gotten some of our very best tax audit officials from FRS to attend this course so that by the end of the 5 days program, they are better equipped to do effective tax audits, which the chairman made it clear that we expect that this course will lead to more tax revenues, but not only more tax revenues. They have a situation where better tax audits are done by FRS. That sends also a signal in the tax system that you have a good tax audit, and that will make taxpayers more compliant.
With tax audit officials of the FIRS now with sharper teeth, we can reasonably say, tax dodgers, beware. Mr. Fowler, once again.
I'd like to once again express the role of tax audit in domestic revenue mobilization. When you have an effective audit, it increases the level of compliance. Each time you have an audit and the taxpayer can get away without paying 10 to 20% of the tax liability, they believe that the following year or next year they'll equally be in a position to get away without paying all the taxes. But once we have an effective audit done and they find out that they are subject to pay 100% of taxes, the following year, I can assure you, they'll also be 100% compliant. And in passing that story on, other people that are not already been audited will most likely start to do the right thing. And that's basically the role of tax audit. You may find out that when you carry out the tax audit, it may account for less than 5% of total revenue. But the impact that it has is that those not in the tax net, those who have still not been audited, will start to comply.
London, New York or Lagos, business or holiday, home or office, you can now carry out your tax transactions from anywhere in the world. You can now file all your tax returns, pay online, get a receipt and even process your tax clearance certificate from anywhere in the world online and in real time. All you need to do is log on to www.firs.gov.ng and click on e-services and be introduced to the world of innovation, convenience and transparency from the FIRS. You can also pay stamp duty as you register a new company with the CAC or for other transactions that require stamp duty payment online. You can also file your withholding tax returns and determine the withholding tax deducted from you is in government coffers so that you can get your receipt within 45 days as long as the deduction has been remitted. Yes, all of this and more online at www.firs.gov.ng/e-services. FIRS, making tax administration as easy as ABC. Please note that all FIRS services are free of charge. This message is from the Federal Inland Revenue Service. It pays to pay your tax.
Thank you for staying with us. We did say in the course of the story on the tax audit training that the Tax Appeal Tribunal featured prominently during the course with respect to tax litigation that may arise from tax audit exercise. The Tax Appeal Tribunal was instituted via the FIRS Establishment Act 2007. The TAT in Nigeria combines the functions of the erstwhile VAT Tribunal and the body of appeal commissioners.
Currently, the Tax Appeal Tribunal sits in 8 zones. The first panels of the tribunal start from 2010 to 2016, while the current panels were inaugurated on November 5, 2018, and immediately swung into action.
On Wednesday, 19th of June 2019, the Tax Appeal Tribunal Abuja Zone had a sit-in in a case involving a mortgage bank and the FIRS with regard to the alleged failure of the mortgage bank to charge and remit VAT. The tribunal held that by virtue of the CBN Act 2011, the mortgage bank was not obliged to charge and remit VAT. The mortgage bank, Infinity Trust Mortgage Bank, had approached the Abuja zone of the Tax Appeal Tribunal, seeking for an order of the Tax Appeal Tribunal for the annulment of the assessment and demand notice in the sum of 29.2 million naira served on it by FIRS, being VAT on services carried out by the bank. The said sum of 29.2 million naira included penalty at 10%, and interest at 15% for the period 2015 to 2016. In its judgment, the Tax Appeal Tribunal held that the FIRS failed to prove that those services carried out by the bank were VATable. The tribunal further held that the bank was not liable to be taxed on those services according to the VAT Act and the Central Bank of Nigeria CBN Act 2011 as amended. It was further held that the FIRS Information Circular No. 9 also supports the fact that such services by mortgage institutions were not VATable.
The respondent has not been able to prove before this tribunal that the services attracting the other incomes from the appellant statement of accounts are vatable services. In the circumstance, the Honorable Tribunal holds that the VAT assessment notice of the respondent dated 17th May 2018, the sum of 29,204,997 naira 0 kobo, and the respondent attendant demand notice dated 6 July 2018 respectively are hereby discharged.
Tax Matters spoke to counsels on both sides.
I think it's a well-considered judgment. However, we're expecting some awards of costs because of the stress and all, but it was a well-considered judgment.
So what do you think about the Tax Appeal Tribunal?
They're doing a good job. They're actually trying.
Now that the judgment has been given, what's your opinion on that?
Well, it's a well-considered judgment. I agree with the member of the tribunal to some extent, and I did not agree with them in some area.
We also sat down with the Secretary of the Tax Appeal Tribunal, Abuja Zone. What is the jurisdiction of the Abuja Zonal Tribunal of the Tax Appeal Tribunal?
The jurisdiction of the Abuja Zonal Office of Tax Appeal Tribunal is Federal Capital Territory, the entire Federal Capital Territory.
Who are the current members of the Zonal Tribunal?
The chairman of the tribunal is Mrs. Alice Iriobe, and we have 4 other members in the panel. We have Honorable Professor Ishola Rufus. We have Honorable Al-Mustafa Aliyu. We have Honorable Julius Ajayi Bamidele. And we have Honorable Nasir Kulia. We have a panel of 5 members.
The concluding part of this interview will come to you very soon on Tax Matters.
And on Thursday, the 20th of June 2019, the Tax Appeal Tribunal Southeast Zone sat in Enugu. Nigerian Breweries PLC had approached the Tax Appeal Tribunal Southeast Zone holding at Enugu to appeal against the decision of the Abia State Board of Internal Revenue, charging it with a tax liability of 10,049,644 naira 45 kobo, which before the final sitting had been revised downwards to 3,263,837 naira 92 kobo. In response to the assessment, Nigeria Breweries PLC stated that the assessment was wrong in law because the Abia State Board of Internal Revenue did not take into account statutory reliefs such as interest on mortgage loans, pension, and life assurance, and that consolidated tax reliefs were not properly computed. In arriving at the revised assessment, the Abia BIR subjected gratuities paid by the appellant to its employees to tax, to which the appellant MBO further objected on the grounds that gratuity, which was subject to tax under the PITA 1993, was no longer subject to tax by virtue of the Finance Miscellaneous Taxation Provisions Decree number 32 of 1996, which deleted gratuity from chargeable income. In response to this, the Abia BRL served the appellant with a notice of refusal to amend assessment, NORA, consequent upon which the appellant, MBO, filed a notice of appeal before the tribunal, praying for 2 reliefs. The tribunal issued an order discharging the revised assessment notice dated 24th April 2017.
Gratuities are tax exempt under the Extant Personal Income Tax Act. Consequently, an order is hereby made discharging the revised assessment notice issued by the respondent to the appellant on 24th April 2017. I so hold.
Tax Matters also spoke to the Secretary of the Tax Appeal Tribunal Southeast Zone, Mrs. Uche Ukuta. And of course, the numero uno, the coordinating secretary of the Tax Appeal Tribunal, ML Abubakar. These interviews will come to you in a subsequent episode of Tax Matters because we want to provide you with as much information as you require on the workings of the Tax Appeal Tribunal. Remember, the Tax Appeal Tribunal is your first line of defense when matters come to a crunch. Thank you for watching and have a beautiful week ahead.
See you next week.